Good evening. My name is Jeff Deck. I'm joining you for another fireplace reading tonight. It's a different fireplace tonight because Mrs. Jeff Deck is commandeering the living room and the fireplace downstairs. So this is the other fake fireplace in our house. I'd like to read to you a couple more little chapters from Pseudo-Chronicles of Mark Huntley tonight. But before I do that, I'd like to do a little author shout out to a friend I know who is a very talented author. Jacqueline Benson is releasing a book called A Fire in the Glass, releasing it next month, and you can pre-order it right now. For more info, go to her Instagram handle. It's J Benson Inc. JBensoninink. So yeah, I'll try to do a little shout out to some cool authors during these readings. But yeah, why don't we go ahead and get started with our Pseudo-Chronicles of Mark Huntley reading tonight. We're picking up with Mark's perspective on Friday, September 3rd, 2004, in an entry called The Longest Lunch. I woke up this morning with the sense that something terrible was going to happen. Didn't know when or how, but the feeling was strong. It might have come from a dream that I forgot when I woke up. In any case, the feeling hasn't entirely left me all day. If I were the superstitious type, I'd be worried. There's been nothing worthy of dreading today. The weather's been agreeable, though still a bit hot, and work wasn't too demanding. Maybe now that I've broken off with Lucy, my dread just doesn't know where to go. My coworker friend Dale and I decided to have lunch down at McCormick and Schmick's. It's a seafood place downtown with the kind of good old boy atmosphere that Dale really gets a kick out of. Not that he's much of a good old boy himself. His skin color would have kept him out of their networks back in the heyday of cronyism. And he's more into manga, that's Japanese comics, than cigars and the Redskins. He is a big boy, however, and big boys can go wherever they please. Lunch turned into long lunch, as has increasingly been the case whenever I head out for a bite with Dale. After the third round of beers arrived, good thing he was buying, conversation turned to Lucy and the breakup. I hadn't even meant to bring it up. It just happened. I blabbed on about how I wasn't sure I'd made the right decision, about how maybe I should have let things play out a little more, how I wanted to call her. Too late. I stopped myself and said, sorry, we could talk about something else. Dale stroked his chin, probably forgetting that his beard wasn't there anymore. His girlfriend made him shave it off. Don't worry about it, Padre. You needed to get that off your chest. I said, but I didn't need to go on for 10 minutes like an asshole. Nah, I guess not, Dale agreed. You did tell me from the start that she was bad news. I did, emphatically. Dale is the only person at the Divide who knows about my whole thing with Lucy. I told him about her a week or so ago, or a week or so after we'd begun dating or hanging out or whatever you do with a married woman. He just grinned and told me a tale of his own. A tale of the forbidden, from 7 years or so ago. He'd been 21, an undergrad at Hunter College in New York City. She'd been 36, the wife of his favorite professor. Yes, there was a reason his GPA dipped to 1.72 that term. But I never expected you to listen, Dale added. I took a swig of my beer. You saw this coming then? Not quite, Dale admitted. I had pictured it ending with a gunshot wound to your face. Oh. But here you are, he said, face intact. Now you can maybe take a different approach to dating for next time. Now, you mean weed out the married ones first? Cool idea. Now, there you go again with the sarcasm, he said. What I mean is, don't rely on Divide investigations for all your prospects. You ever try finding a woman on the computer? That's like the new thing. Could be just the right fit for a guy like you. A guy like me, huh? I said. A four-eyed nerd with no people skills. No, man, Dale said, but he was smiling. Listen, My brother just banged this girl he met on Friendster. I thought Friendster was for friends. No thank you. I'm not in the mood for any... Okay, how about this, he said, leaning in. Here's a magic ticket. Come out with me to a party tonight. My neighbor's throwing it. Prava. You know, the hot girl I mentioned once or twice. Or 10 or 12 times. And I shook my head. Thanks, but I don't know if high adventure in Arlington is the right thing for me right now. Phew, Dale said. He folded his arms. It's the only thing for you right now. What better way to kick off Labor Day weekend? You know you'll just be moping the rest of it. You'll have plenty of time for that after tonight. Insulting, but pretty accurate. The plans I had lined up for the weekend at that point were, in fact, moping, interspersed with sulking and maybe a little listlessness on the side. Suddenly that didn't sound so enticing. Still, I hesitated. I don't know. There'll be beer. You're trying to turn me into an alcoholic. And doing pretty damn well so far. Come on. Prava's inviting all her cute friends from, wherever she works. I snickered. I can see you two are close. Whatever. Remember, beer. All right, I said. I'll try to stop by. So that's where I'll be heading in about an hour or so. I definitely won't be going there to pick up some random Prava friend. I'm just figuring on some alcohol and some good times with my pal, his girlfriend, I'm assuming she'll be there, and a whole lot of strangers. And if it turns out to suck, well, then at least I'll know why I felt like something bad is going to happen. In any case, it's nice to be reminded that I have a friend or two out there who try to pep me up when I'm down. I'll report tomorrow if there's anything to report. Posted by Mark Huntley at 7:28 p.m. So let's see how that party was for Mark. Sunday, September 5th, 2004. Face from my past. Whew, here it is Sunday night, a good way through Labor Day weekend. I'm only just now getting up the energy to write about Fridays, pushing into Saturdays. Epic of a party down in Arlington. Yesterday I slept until early evening and then was too listless to do much of anything. Today I went to a couple of nearby yard sales to look into a cut-rate piece of furniture or two for my pathetically Spartan apartment. Did get a nice little end table for $20 from a woman in Logan Circle who's moving to France next weekend. But you're probably looking for something more compelling than my furniture needs, right? So Friday around 9, I took the metro down into the suburban wilds of Arlington, Virginia. It was about a 10 or 12 minute walk from the station to the quiet street where I'd find Dale's duplex. As usual, the city was eerily subdued, bordering on comatose. I crossed out of the garish lights and monolithic office buildings and hotels and into the dark, tree-lined neighborhood. A little island of noise drew me to it. I could hear music and people talking and laughing in the upper part of the house as I approached. Dale lived on the first floor. His windows were dark and nobody answered the door. He had to have gone up already. Ignoring my fear that he hadn't and that I would burst into a room full of strangers instead of almost full of strangers, I trudged up the stairs and tapped on the door. The door was decorated with little paper flowers and a sign that said, "Home is where you make it, but don't get too comfortable." A pretty Indian girl in her late 20s opened the door. Something by Usher was playing in the background. "Hi, are you Prava?" I said. "Prabha," she enunciated for me, her smile fading a bit. "And you are?" Damn Dale, I thought. He hadn't even bothered to get her name right. He just knew her as the piece of ass upstairs. I'd get him back for this. "Sorry, I'm Mark Huntley, a friend of Dale's from work," I said. I gave her a smile to try to coax hers back. It worked. I do have a pretty smile. "Come on in," she said, opening the door wider. "He's in the kitchen making some Irish car bombs or something." I followed her inside. 20 or 25 people were crammed into her living room, kitchen, and back balcony. It smelled like a couple of competing colognes or perfumes with an undercurrent of sweat trying to break through. Most of the guests were somewhere between my age and Dale's. He's 31. Though a couple of older people in maybe the late 40s range were there too. I remember Dale saying that a bunch of the guests would be Prabha's work friends, so that seemed to account for the grayer folk. I headed for the kitchen where Dale was indeed mixing drinks in front of a small audience, putting on a grand show. "Hey, Padre," he said when he saw me. The shot he was pouring slopped over the rim. "Hey," I said, smirking. "Just met Prabha." He grinned at my word emphasis, but chose not to respond. As a journalist, he should have been ashamed of botching the details. Then again, very little shamed Dale. I didn't see his girlfriend Yasmin anywhere. "Care for an IRA special?" he asked. "I think I'll start with something lighter. Is there beer around?" "In the fridge. You know what they say, though." "Yeah, I know. Whatever." I pulled out a Yingling from the fridge. Dale indicated the 4 other people in the kitchen. 3 white guys in button-down shirts and an African-American girl wearing a purple tank. "Hey, Mark, I'd like you to meet some of Prabha's work pals from the NAADA. This is Stephen, Will, Frank, and Tish." NAADA? Nada? I figured it must be one of the many lobbying organizations in town, like the one I'd worked for before I got canned. Most of those associations had incomprehensible acronyms. I couldn't be bothered to unpack this one. I nodded at all of them. "Hi." "Mark works with me at the Divide," Dale said. "Here you all are." He passed out the beers and shot glasses. "Cool. So are you a reporter too?" Tish asked. "Dale's been telling us about all the amazing stories he's chased down." "Right. Like that article about the Majority Whip's new dog?" Dale would have to get up off his ass to chase down any story, amazing or not, and that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. He was one of the laziest journalists I'd ever met. But hey, I wouldn't want to spoil his chance to impress this random girl, would I? Back to the original question. No, I verify information in the articles," I said. "So you're an editor?" asked Stephen. "No." "Cheers, everyone," Dale said, and dropped his shot glass into his Guinness and then downed the whole thing. Everyone followed suit. He slammed his empty glass within a glass on the kitchen counter and slapped me on the back. "You missed out, man. Next round, right? These lightweights will need a few minutes first anyway. I was thinking to change it up. Get a little more with the times. What do you think would go into an Iraqi car bomb?" "Too soon," I said. "My friend, that shit is still happening." "By the way," he said, looking back at Stephen, Will, Frank, and Tish, "he's a fucking fact checker. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. Somebody's got to clean up after sloppy reporters like this guy right here." "Yeah," I said. "I'm going to go mingle." I wandered among the guests in the living room for a bit, being introduced to several people and forgetting their names right afterward. The Yingling in my hand ran out in no time. I started getting the feeling I tend to get, that a party is just a euphemism for a bunch of people trapped in a room together. Niceties like music and beer can only do so much. I needed air. After recruiting a second soldier to replace my dead one, I slipped out to the balcony. It was pretty generous, almost the size of my entire apartment. Life in the burbs, I suppose. People were out here to smoke and talk, but a girl facing off to the bland downtown skyline was doing neither. One foot curled around the bottom bar of the balustrade, and the other tapping its heel in an unsteady rhythm on the floor. I watched as a cloud of cigarette smoke drifted across her silhouette. Prabha appeared at my shoulder and offered to make introductory rounds to most everyone. Again, mostly folks belonging to this NADA organization. I met Greg, Lee, Clara, Raj, Dennis, Hannah, forgetting them all in turn. Last of all, Prabha turned to the girl at the rail and said, "Hey, Gwendolyn, right? You okay?" "Sure," she said, without turning around. "I think something's coming in now. Rain Sunday." Then, realizing that we were waiting on her, she did a half turn, glanced at me, and then at Prabha. "Thanks for the forecast," said Prabha. "This is Mark Huntley. He works with my neighbor Dale." "Nice to meet you, Gwendolyn," I said, offering my non-beer hand, and then noticed how she was frozen in place, staring at me. She had wavy brown hair and clear gray eyes and a bit too serious face. Cute, but not my type. But there was a pattern in her features that my brain wanted to trace, a connection that wanted to be made. "Mark Huntley," she said. She broke into a wide grin. I can't believe it. And she gave me a generous hug as I just stood there. Do I murmured. You don't remember me, do you? She said, pulling back and meeting my eyes. I stared at her and suddenly I did remember. 14, 15 years, but still. Gwendolyn St. John, I said. Jesus Christ. I had no idea you were down here. Same here. I never thought we'd cross paths again, said Gwen. She let me go. I mean, I haven't even thought about you for at least 5 or 6 years. Kind of a strange comment, but I let it pass. I was too wrapped up in studying her features. Yeah, now that I knew who she was, the traces of her former selves were pretty obvious behind the grown-up face. I could see the 9-year-old Gwendolyn I'd climbed trees with, the 7-year-old I'd played in the sand with, the 4-year-old I'd made cry. A stack of individual Gwendolyns, and somehow the pile coalesced into one true image of her. My mind updated the Gwendolyn file in a flash. Can I get you a beer, I said. Falling back into the mundane is what I do. She nodded. Her face looked serious again. That was a pretty brief honeymoon for a grin, but I did remember she rarely smiled even as a kid. Frowny Wenny, the gravest second grader you ever did meet. Still, as we spent the next couple of hours chatting over beers and filling in a decade and a half of each other's history, she seemed engaged and eager to talk. Eager to talk, even. If there was something bothering her, it wasn't that she'd met me again. That wouldn't make sense, would it? Apparently, when she moved away from New England at age 10, Gwendolyn and her family settled in Michigan for her dad's job. She spent the next 8 years in Midwestern obscurity, and then she went on to school at GWU right here in D.C. She liked the city so much that she stuck around after graduating, winding up as a paralegal at a law firm called Freiholt and Wagner when she couldn't get into the GWU law school. She found Jesus in Michigan and then lost him again in college. She has never had a boyfriend longer than 5 months. She is taking pottery classes at the Smithsonian and has a tabby cat named Drake. So, there it was. She's been in the city long before, and including the 2 years that I've been living here. I suppose it was inevitable I'd run into her sooner or later. Maybe it should have been before now, but how she ended up at this party wasn't clear to me. I guess she had a mutual friend with one of the partygoers, and then the mutual friend didn't show up at the party. But I kind of have a hard time remembering the explanation now. I went through a lot of beers during our conversation. I wasn't anxious, I just liked drinking them. We were joined by Dale eventually, who marveled at our chance meeting and then persuaded me into one of his horrible Iraqi car bombs. By the time 1 o'clock rolled around and some of the NADA crew clamored to move on to a DC bar, I was very drunk. This is where the details blur, and also a good stopping point for now, because this is where things get weird. I'll pick up the rest of the thread tomorrow. Posted by Mark Huntley at 11:41 p.m. All right, well, thanks you everybody for tuning in. I will see you tomorrow at 8 for the continuation of the story. If you liked what you heard, you can buy me a beer or check out my books at the links in my bio. Hope you all have a good night, and I will see you next time.